involved with Occupy the Corner, which you'll tell us a little bit more about. So I just welcome you. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on your show. And also, when I first of all say hi to my mother, shout out to my mother. Always have to give love to the mother.
Good.
But yes, so I am a student at the Milano School of International Affairs Management and Urban Policy, which is part of the new school. I'm getting my master's degree in urban policy. I grew up in Harlem. I grew up in West Harlem, 148th Street. Previously lived in Grant houses, and now I live in Lincoln houses.
Okay, so you've been around. You understand this city, and some of can't speak to everything, but basically you know what it is to be a youth in New York City, and basically the challenges that arise from being a youth in the city. And it's very easy to get your education, get your degree, and then want to just flee and not stay and make a difference. But there have been some great men recently, like Jeffrey Canada, David Banks, men who grew up also in community, who left and got their education, but who have come back and decided, I'm going to make a powerful impact for the next generations to come, for the future. And as we talked, I think you're headed in the same direction. So let's get right into it, and let's talk about this issue of our youth in society today. And whether it's society, the media, or the church, quite frankly, what I keep hearing is the youth are the problem. It's an issue with the youth. So what would you have to say to that?
Well, I would say that whenever you look at youth, whenever you look at children are a reflection of what's going on around them. They're a reflection of their environment. They say the fruit falls not far from the tree. There's a passage that says, if you train up a child in the right way, they should go and they will not turn from it. So I think that whenever people start blaming, if you look at 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 16 teenagers, even people into young adulthood, into their late teens and early 20s. These are widely acknowledged people who are widely acknowledged to not be able to are ready to make responsible decisions all the time. It's just a fact of life. You're not responsible to make adult decisions when you're 16.
Right.
So then to put all the onus on what's going on in the community on someone who is 16 just doesn't make any sense.
It's interesting you mentioned Proverbs 22:6, and I neglected to say that Talib is a believer. He loves the Lord. And, train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they are older, they shall not depart. I have a friend who works in Harlem, and she's in the school system, and I speak to teachers all the time. I'm with InsideSchools.org, and what we find is kids as early as the second grade are modeling, if you will, behaviors that they couldn't possibly really feel or know about, from being hard or using language or having attitudes that you would see on someone who is older. But here you have a second grader, an 8-year-old, already personifying that. Talk to us a little bit about this modeling and the influences that are around our kids as they're coming up.
Well, I've had the benefit and the privilege to be around 4 young children. My sister was with us, and she has my 14-year-old niece, 12-year-old nephew, 9-year-old nephew, and 7-year-old nephew. And one of the things that I've really learned very well, and hi to all of them. One thing I've learned really well is that children do what you do. You can say what you want to them. You can give them all kinds of instructions.
Yes.
But they do what you do. My nephew will start washing dishes if he sees me washing the dishes.
Okay.
And so I think in terms of when we talk about modeling behavior, when we see children acting in a certain way that we that we may disapprove of, that we think is incorrect. I mean, they learn that from someplace.
Right.
Someone is teaching them.
Okay.
Or if there's things that we think you should be doing that they're not doing, someone is not teaching them that.
Mm-hmm. So that's the key. The kids learn these decisions from somewhere. It's whether it's their dress, their language. It's coming from someplace, and so society, between media and music and all these things, they're getting their self-worth from the wrong places.
Right.
Their identity is coming from other influences, and I think it's fair to say that parents are probably the first go-to when you think about this. So when you refer to parents nowadays, what is it that you see is lacking in that structure?
Well, I think a lot of quite frankly, I think a lot of parents aren't being parents. I think a lot of parents are scared of their kids. I think a lot of parents are afraid of being parents. They're afraid of saying that they don't know something. You know, if your child is doing, you know, whatever kind of math they're doing in 5th grade, and you don't know how to do 5th grade math, you know, it's okay to say that you don't know, but then the onus is on you to go and try to find out how do you get that done.
Well, you know, let me back up to something you just said. Some parents are scared of their kids.
Yes.
What? Talk to me. What?
Well, I mean, some parents are literally physically scared of their children,
Okay.
and I think part of that stems from not having proper balance and discipline when the child is younger.
Okay.
So, for example, let's say you have a mother who is not the stereotype, but we have a lot of single mothers now.
I'm one, so I know.
And so you have a single mother, and she has a son, or 2 sons, or 3 sons.
Yeah.
And if there's not that proper parenting when that son is 5 and 10, when that son is 15 and 20, he's getting to be a grown man.
Okay.
You know, at least that's how he's thinking of himself.
Right.
And so he's saying, well, I'm going to go out, and he's saying no. I mean, there's some parents who are literally physically scared of their children, of what their children will do to them. And especially when you have situations where you have grandparents who are raising children, grandparents raising the grandkids, and you know, and they're just not able to, they don't have the physical capacity to handle or to restrain some of the youth in their household. And I think that not even that, other adults in the community are scared of children. I mean, one thing I had to check myself on is, you know, and I've said this before, especially at the corners, is that, you know, we cannot be afraid of our youth. If we want our youth to have better lives, we can't walk around being afraid of them.
Yeah, I think this is a crucial point, and we have to really wrap our minds around it and understand it. I'm going to play a track by Lecrae. He's really talking, it's a real life experience this rapper is sharing. His dad died early, and so his uncles became his role models, and he wanted to be just like them. He wanted to do the things that they did, and as a result, he became a part of a lifestyle that he wouldn't have had if he had a proper structure, a proper model in the home. And thankfully God stepped in and remodeled his life. But we have to really take into account that as parents and as community, we are modeling, we're constantly showing something to our youth and telling them what's acceptable.
Walk like, talk like, even think like you. The only one I could look to. You're teaching me to be just like you. Well, I just gotta be like, I just gotta be like you. Dear Uncle Chris, Uncle Keith, Uncle Ricky, before the Lord get me, I gotta say something quickly. I grew up iffy since my daddy wasn't with me, shoe. I wasn't picky, I'll take any male figure. You stepped in at the right time. It's cause of you that I write rhymes. times, you probably never knew that. I love the way you used to come through, teach me to do the things that men do. And true, you showed me stuff I probably shouldn't have seen, but you had barely made it out your teens. Took me under your wings. I wanted hats, I wanted clothes just like you. Lean to the side when I roll just like you. And care if people didn't like you. You wanna bang, I wanna bang too. Skyline, Pyro. You would've died, I would've died too. You went to prison, got sick, lost your pops, yeah, I cried too. You never know who's right behind you. I got a little son now, and he do whatever I do. But it's something deep inside you that tell you it's gotta be more than doing what other guys do. There had nobody there to guide you, but I followed your footsteps, and this shouldn't surprise you. You realize you, yeah. I just wanna be like you.
I just wanna be like you. Walk like, talk like, even think like you. The only one I could look to. You're teaching me to be just like you. Well, I just gotta be like. I just gotta be like
you. Now all I see is money, cars, jewels, stars. Womanizers, tough guys, guns, knives, and scars. Drug pushers, thug strippers, fast girls, fast life. Everything I wanted and everything I could ask life. If this ain't living, then they lied well. Guess I married an old wives' tale. Wow, fail. I don't know another way to go. This is the only way they ever showed. I got this emptiness inside that got me fighting for approval, cause I missed out on my daddy saying way to go. Ain't get that verbal affirmation. I know how to treat a woman, know how to fix an engine to keep the car running. So now I'm looking at the media and I'm following what they feed me. Rap stars, trap stars, whoever wants to lead me. Even though they lie, they still tell me that they love me. They say I'm good at bad things, at least they proud of me.
I just wanna be like you. Walk like, talk like, even think like you. The only one I could look to. You're teaching me to be just like you. Well, I just gotta be like. I just gotta be like you.
I was created by God, but I ain't wanna be like him, I wanna be him. The Jack Sparrow of my Caribbean. I remember the first created being, and how he shifted the blame on his dame for fruit he shouldn't have eaten. And now look at us all out of Eden, wearing designer fig leaves by Louis Vuitton, make believe it. But God sees through my foolish pride, and how I'm weak like Adam, another victim of Lucifer's lies. But then in steps Jesus. All men were created to lead, but we needed somebody to lead us, more than a teacher, but somebody to buy us back from the darkness. You can say he redeemed us, taught us that real leaders follow God, finish the work cause we on our job, taught us not to rhyme, but give life, love a wife like he loved the church, without seeing how many hearts we can break first. I wanna be like you in every way, so if I gotta die every day, unworthy sacrifice, but the least I can do is give the most of me, cause being just like you is what I'm supposed to be. They say you came for the lame, I'm the lamest. I made a mess, but you say you'll erase it, I'll take it. They say you came for the lame, I'm the lamest. I broke my life, but you say you'll replace it, I'll take it.
I hope you get the point. Just to be like you. People are designed, specifically kids, to model, to be formed, to be molded, and they're going to be molded by someone. And if it's not going to be their parents, if it's not going to be in the home, someone's going to step in and do that molding. We are listening to Don't Give Up, and my guest today is Talib Hudson, and we are talking about youth, the community, and the church. And we're looking into the issue, and my first thought was addressing the fact that, you know, people say that the youth are the problem, but what we're finding is that it's not the youth that are the problem. It starts with us. It starts with each one of us. And so we were talking about parents before we left off here, and you said something very interesting in terms of if a parent doesn't know something, it should be okay for them to find out the information and to say that they don't know. And I'm a single mom, and we get stressed out and overwhelmed. We don't have enough support, structures and help. And so a lot of times there isn't that social awareness or that community. We're very isolated. So what would you say to that parent in terms of breaking out of that and feeling comfortable to reach out for help?
Well, first of all, I think it needs to be acknowledged that it's definitely difficult work. Even if you have two parents in the household, raising kids is no easy task. So by no means do I want to say that anything is simple. However, one really has to think about and make some tough choices, and think about what kind of lives they want for their children, what kind of future they want for their children. And I think parents and all adults really need to humble ourselves. And I think, sometimes if we don't know something, we feel embarrassed by it. We feel ashamed. We feel like we should know. Like how can I not know how to help out my 10-year-old with their math homework? Or how can I not know how to help out my 12-year-old with their English? If you don't know, you don't know. I mean, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is not doing something about it, because then you teach your kids not to do something about it. If you don't know and you say, I don't know, but I'm going to find out, then that helps. Then you're modeling behavior of learning, of researching. And I have to give credit to my mother, who, of course, she wasn't perfect. No one's perfect, but she was an incredible mother, and she always instilled in us education. She always instilled in us, the value of trying to find out something, even if you don't know it. So I would say if you go to the parent-teacher conference, hopefully you're going to the parent-teacher conferences anyway. Mm-hmm. And go to the parent-teacher conference, and when you're at the parent-teacher conference, ask the teacher, say, look, how can I help my child with their homework better? How can I learn how to do this? If you have a computer at home and you have the internet, you go on YouTube and just YouTube videos about how to do. You can YouTube just about almost how to do anything. Mm-hmm. If you don't know how to do long division, just put in long division in YouTube. I'm sure something will pop up.
It's interesting because as a single mom who went through this, thankfully my kids are older. I don't have one in the high school system now, but I definitely remember the stress of those days and feeling so overwhelmed at the end of the day. But the reality is, if you're not reading with your kid, if you're not checking their homework, if you're not providing a sufficient dinner or a sufficient breakfast, you're not providing those skills. Those basic needs have to be met in order for them to thrive and do well. Of course, cursing at your kid is not cool. It's not because a parent doesn't love their child. It's an issue of expression, understanding that your child is not throwing a temper tantrum because they hate you, right? There's something else that's going on, and to have, to be able to communicate and find out what's going on. A big thing also is for parents to realize that your existence right now may be very hard, and you might think to yourself, if I show this kid love, cuddling, kissing, and all this stuff, hand holding, that I'm not preparing them for the real world, that the real world is hard and they need to, buck up right now. And I've heard parents say that to kids as young as 2 years old. But you said something very interesting about that, because that's a mentality that's saying, this world that I see is all you're ever going to have, instead of saying, preparing them.
Right, to have something better than, every parent, in theory, should want their children to have better than what they had, right? That's just, no matter who you are, what culture you come from. But, it's easy, I think, to get stuck in our own world, in our own thinking, in our own problems. And this goes back to humbling yourself and not assuming that your child is going to grow up and is going to be limited by the same things that limited you. You should want them to be able to surpass the things that you have done.
And it will definitely be the case if you don't personally believe that they can or they will. then you definitely are already sentencing them
Exactly.
to that life. However, I don't want to put the whole burden of this on the parents, because like we're saying, there's a lot that parents need as well. And sometimes there's that neighbor, that community group that is there with information, right? And so you have to also be willing to, you meaning, people who see someone who's suffering, you see someone, needs help, and instead of just talking about it or even doing something wonderful like praying about it, you can extend yourself in some way to be of help to that person in their life if you see they need it.
Yeah, and the thing is that there's some people in our community who just don't know, right? They don't know what they don't know. Mm-hmm. But there's some people in our community who do know.
Right.
Yes. They're getting up at 4:00 in the morning, taking their kids to the charter school and going downtown and talking to the officials at whatever office. Mm-hmm. But people are so, for lack of a better word, selfish with information. And I'm not trying to be hard on anyone, but the thing is that there's some of us in the community who do know, and we need to share that information. Even if you're just walking in the house or walking into your building or your apartment complex, and you see a neighbor who has a young child, and you happen to know of a particular resource, whether it be tutoring, whether it be after school, whether it be that charter school is having a lottery coming up. Not say that charter schools are the answer. That's another conversation.
Yeah, but information.
The information. Share that information. Don't be selfish with it.
And I think there's fear there. There's that idea that if I share, then that slot or that position might be taken away from mine. But it doesn't really work that way. And the more you share information, actually, is the more people will share with you. The more that you will know. It actually broadens your opportunities.
And Jack, it's funny when you say that, because people are so they say, well, that's going to take my child's slot. Well, it does take a village to raise a child. You know what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years? That little kid who you didn't want to help, they might be the one that's shooting your child. Mm-hmm. Your quote unquote good child who wasn't involved with anything, and was just on a straight and narrow. And now these thug hooligans. Well, you had a chance to help the thug hooligan when they were 5 and 6 years old, and you turn. It's like the good, almost like the Good Samaritan story. You know what I mean? Like you wanted to turn your back on someone who needed help. So that's what I would say about that.
Well, that is a powerful statement, and I won't even try to diffuse it by saying anything. I'm going to go right into this track by Dietrich Haddon, Help Somebody. I see. So, while we're working on that, that's something that's happening in terms of the studio. But the issue here is that people need to really understand that point that you said is so powerful. But on the positive side of that is the fact that if I don't, I shouldn't start with the negative. I should start with the positive. Is if I share the information with a parent, right? Let's say it's schools, right? And I keep sharing that information, and we all go and we all apply, and the school is getting so many more applications than there are seats. That tells the Department of Education or that local government or whomever, hey, this is a need, this is a demand that's happening here, and then that puts the onus on them to try to create more, right? But when you keep it to yourself, you're actually limiting how things can move and how things can progress. So it's really extremely important that parents get into that and understand that we're here. I said parents. We all, as individuals, we need to understand that we're here to help one another, and we are a part of a body.
Right.
And so we have this individual concept, but we're a part of a body. And Jesus was very clear. He said that he didn't come for the healthy. He came to heal the sick, right? Those who are broken, who are rejected. When I started the show with that theme of brokenness. And so there are broken people all around us. So we as a body, we need to have a mindset to give, to share, to help others along the way. And I wasn't always that way myself. Everyone has a story. And it's important that we don't judge, that we learn how to pray for one another, but we really have to listen, really listen to other people, and that's where our ability to help comes in, because you share that people have various life experiences, and so I can't come in and just judge that, Why don't you talk about a little bit more about that piece of the puzzle?
About the different
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I know I've had my own particular different life experience. I've been blessed with many different opportunities and privileges. I went to a private boarding school for high school at a time when I was supposed to go to Brooklyn Tech, and a week before school started, I got a call from St. Mark's School in Massachusetts saying that they had a spot on the financial aid scholarship list. But the reason I got to St. Mark's was through ABC, their Better Chance program.
Okay.
But my mother made me fill out the application. I did not want to fill it out. I protested. I wanted to watch TV. I wanted to, play Nintendo, because we had, that's when we had the old Nintendo.
Right.
No, but she said you're gonna, and this is we didn't have a computer. I had to write everything out. When I made a mistake, I had to use whiteout and go back and write it over again. And my mother made me. She said, "Sit down, and you're gonna fill this application. I'm gonna do it." And I think that it really helped change the course of my life. I would have been all right anyway, but it really helped open me to a whole bunch of different and new experiences that I never would have had otherwise. And again, I have to credit my mother with really pushing education, because the guidance counselor at my middle school, when the scholarships organizations like ABC and Prep for Prep and Oliver Scholars, and they go to public schools looking for quote unquote gifted and talented kids, and my guidance counselor, in all fairness to her, was probably overwhelmed with all these kids she had to deal with.
Right.
She just said, "Keep on moving. We don't have anybody here." That's the story.
Wow. So that happens a lot. I gotta tell you.
Yeah. So my parents, being very proactive, said, "Oh no. We're gonna make sure that our kids get the best education." And so I really do have to credit my mother with that. And I know there's some of my friends who didn't have the benefit of either going to boarding school, or whose parents who were involved and loved their kids just as much, but maybe just didn't have as many resources or just didn't have the wherewithal to get as many opportunities for their kids. So I've definitely been blessed and privileged in that respect, and I'm very grateful. But that's also one of the reasons why I feel so strongly about giving back and contributing, and everyone doing their part. And I don't want to judge people or cast aspersions, but I feel very strongly that they're say to whom much is given, much is required. And there are a lot of people in our community who have been blessed and just want to be blessed and keep it moving.
I just have to share that sometimes as believers, we're caught up in our own thing, and we mean well. However, we don't have the proper perspective. So when I say I used to do it too, I used to do the judging thing, it's because I was the way I grew up, and the level of engagement that my mom had sounds like your mom had. I just didn't understand certain things. So from the outside, I would judge it and say, why aren't you engaged with your kids? Why aren't you doing things this way? And then when I started to listen and understand the challenges, and even more than that, God actually took me through my paces, right? I ended up on WIC lines and Medicaid lines and sitting in environments with these people, right? These people, and understanding they're just like me. There's no difference. They desire the same things that I desire. Everyone wants good neighborhood education. Everyone wants to have accessibility to a well-balanced diet. No one wants to walk out in the street and wonder if it's safe enough for me to get to school each day. So to really break down any mindset that you have in your mind that the youth or their parents or these people actually don't want help and they don't want to change, I think that's an excuse that we tell ourselves that is not beneficial and it's not helpful. And so thus this might have been the impetus that births Occupy the Corner. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about what that is, because I don't think everyone knows. Tell us about the movement, who started it.
Right. Well, I don't know if everyone can see on the computer. I'm wearing my I Am Peace T-shirt. Yeah. I Am Peace, the I Am Peace Project with Street Corner Resources, led by the illustrious Aisha Sekou. So, Occupy the Corners was an effort that was started by National Action Network under the leadership of the Reverend Al Sharpton in response to the rash of violence, particularly among youth in our communities across the city. And I think it was the 4-year-old little boy who got killed at the park here in the Bronx, actually. That was one of the catalysts for starting this movement. So Reverend Al Sharpton said, we're going to occupy the corners. Basically, we're going to take back the spaces in our community from violence. And so there were particular corners that had experienced violence in the recent past, where we went out there from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
And I just want to say that there's a number of corners throughout the city that were identified, and 225th and White Plains Road was also one of the corners that was identified.
Right, which is actually what's right down the street.
Right down the street.
From where we are now. So we did that for that was 4 weeks that the National Action Network made the call for, and which I was on 129th Street and 7th Avenue in Harlem, and that corner was being led by Aisha Sekou, and she's the founder and executive director of Street Corner Resources, which is a community-based organization. And we actually went out there again last weekend as well, just to continue it. I'm not sure if we're doing it this week, and I have to talk to her about that. But basically, what we were doing was from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. we were occupying the space. We had a peace effort going on, like an open mic for youth on Friday nights, which people can come out, and some people came and they sang, some people danced. And we're actually going to continue that in another phase. The details of that are being worked out, so stay tuned, because we think that was a good effort. People would walk by and say, "Oh, what's going on there?"
Right.
And while we were on these corners, there was no violence occurring on these corners. On 129th and 7th, there was actually a shooting recently prior to the Occupy the Corners movement, but for that period of time, there was nothing going on. But of course, it's always hard to sustain something like that, because you always need more people coming out and more people getting involved, and so it's easy for the people who do come out to get burned out.
So now you said that the Reverend Al Sharpton started this, and there were other reverends, ministers that were lead voices. With that, I have to ask the question: given the multitude of churches or houses of worship in Harlem, what did the actual support on the ground really look like from the attendees? Right.
I don't mean to be the negative one here, but I would say, given the multitude of houses of worship in Harlem, from what I've seen, the faith community was absent. Just period, point blank, absent. Whole congregations were just not there. And yes, you had Reverend Al Sharpton, Reverend Vernon Williams, Reverend Al Taylor. You had a multitude of reverends and ministers who were active in the movement, but as a whole, as a body, as a church, the church was absent in this movement.
So guys, that's the thing. We can't just say the youth are the problem, their families are the problem, society, media is the problem. No, you know what? We are the problem, because if there are those who are brave enough to stand up and say this is an issue and this is what we can do about it, as simple as it is, and we don't go out there, I speak to myself. It's a problem and it's an issue. I'm going to play a track that's just a little bit of it. You really have to listen. It is strong hip hop, but it's all saved, all serious, and it's about going out into community and being there every day and being in their face, not in a bad way, but in a way that is saying, I'm here with you. When we come back, we're going to talk more about practical on the ground things that can be done as a body, as a collective. Time is going so fast. Wow, let's do this.
is dangerous.
All saved, all serious. All saved, all serious.
Bad feeling about this.
All saved, all serious. All saved, all saved, all serious. Licked up, 40 deep in the street, you can find us. Yeah, we on theology, but we be on our grind. Yeah, when we were some youngins, only had two ways to run. One, become an animal. Two, get out the jungle. So we got our line on a line, bro, this what we do. Run up on you and your crew and tell y'all Jesus is the truth. Open air evangelists, relationships, we do it all. Back still full of tracks with a Johnny Mac hat to the back and I back to the wall. Plus I got some homies out there who gon' rep the rock. If you wanna make them stop, you gon' have to bring a chopper. If they get martyred, then we gon' go harder. Share the gospel on their row and let them know that they departed. You don't wanna get us started, this is what we do, who we are. 116 to the day we rip back, trying to be no superstar. Chicks in the click that'll pull your car. Dudes in the street like cops and cars. You ain't heard the truth today, I promise we'll be back tomorrow. Licked up, 40 deep, all saved, all serious. Licked up, 40 deep, hey, holla at us if you curious. Licked up, 40 deep, we all saved, all serious. Licked up, 40 deep, come holla at us if you curious. Licked up, 40 deep, all saved, all serious. Licked up, 40 deep, all saved, all serious. Licked up, 40 deep, all saved, all serious. Licked up, 40 deep, all saved, all serious.
Like crack, clicked up 40 D's all day. Backpacks, stay strapped with Johnny Mac and tracks to play for me this morning. The label is read.
Okay, so I just dropped a little bit of that on you, all saved, all serious. So, if you're not really getting the lyrics there, it's talking about getting out into the street where the kids are, being there every day, being consistent, and that if you don't hear me today, will you hear me tomorrow? And the only way they can hear you is if you are there. You have to consistently be in that presence. And that's one of the very first things you said to me when I asked you, what can the church do to really be of an assistance to the youth? And you said it's an issue of consistency to make a difference. Share a little bit more about that in terms of, even what can we start asking ourselves. 'Cause one of the things this song talked about, that track, was the whole open air. And for, I'm talking to an audience that knows what open air is, but that's when, for those who don't know, that's when the church leaves the building and they probably will go out on their corner, and instead of giving the invitation of who Jesus Christ is inside the church, they do it outside, but they're doing it to the same group of people at the same time that they would have the church service, and nobody's out there. So I made a joke. I'm like, it really is open air, because you're just speaking to the air. There's nobody actually paying attention to you. So what do you say to that? What is your solution, your take on it?
Right. Well, I should preface my comments by saying I know that I can be critical of the church, and the church is the body, but part of that is just because I see the enormous potential that lies within it, especially within our communities. And so sometimes I get frustrated because I see the potential and I see the great need that is in our communities, and so sometimes that leads me to speak with a critical tone. But I don't want to sound like I'm coming from a place of judgment or negativity. To address your point specifically, I think that you are correct in saying a lot. I think similar to with the Occupy the Corners, we were there from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And people say, well, I don't want to come out 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., but that's the point. Like, the point is to be out there when it's not convenient.
Right.
That shows commitment.
Right.
And so I think a lot of times with the church, we do a lot of things that's convenient for the church. And what's convenient for the church may not be convenient for the community. So, for example, services on a Sunday at 9 a.m., whether it be open air or in the building, may necessarily be convenient for everyone. The church I go to is the Journey Church, and there are, I think, 4 or 5 services every Sunday, and one including being at 6:30 p.m. Now, I know every church can't do that, because every church just doesn't have that kind of physical capacity. But I think that trying to cater to the needs of the community as opposed to the needs of the church is very important. One thing that St. Luke A&E Church up on 152nd in Amsterdam does that I think is very good is during the summer they'll hand out free water bottles and on the water bottle it'll have the label. The label will have the same with AME Church's information. So you're just like they're going out and they're giving, living water to people. So it's like metaphorical.
Yeah, and you're making a practical connection as well. So that you really have to take a look at is what you're doing as a church really relevant? Is it making a difference? Are you bringing people into the door? And as the song said, you can't be thin-skinned.
Right.
You can't really expect to go out there one day, 1 week, even one summer and make an impact where you go like, oh yes, and because our summer work, we now have, 25 new young people here. It's really an everyday thing, and yeah, you're going to get cursed out. You're going to get looked at like you're strange.
Right.
And you say a very interesting phrase about that when you get cursed out, you should think,
so what? I mean, that's what I'm not afraid you're thinking of, but that's what I say. It's just, so what? I mean, my thing is that Jesus, when he was going out into the multitudes and when the apostles and disciples were going out, people didn't come at them with open arms all the time and saying, "Oh, what you're saying is great and we love you." No, they got cussed out. They got spit on. When I was doing Occupy the Corners and I was passing out a flyer to a group of young men on the stoop. And one of them was, saying, "Nah, I don't want to come to your peace life." And I was like, "Well, what would make you come out? What would interest you?" He's like, "You know what? I don't even want to talk to you about it right now. I'm not even feeling that, So I was like, okay, give him that. I'm gonna keep him moving. You know what I mean? Like maybe I'll see him. I'm sure I'll see him again at some point, and maybe I'll offer it to him again. But the point is not to say, "Oh man, when I came up to him and he looked at me a certain kind of way, and see, that's why I can't help these people out." And that's what we do. That's what we do, and we take it personal. It's not about us. And if the church is really about the Great Commission, right?
Yeah.
About go, right?
Uh-huh.
Go out and make disciples, right?
Right.
Go. You can't sit up in the church. You can't sit up in your apartment, and think that you're gonna make change. Go out into the people.
Right.
Go out at night.
That is the Great Commission, Matthew 28, 18 to 20. Matthew 28, verse 18 to 20. Thank you. Go ye out into all the world. And there's a certain discomfort that is associated with that. And I'm seeing our brother Pastor Roy wanted to jump in on the conversation. I wish you could, but we've only got 10 minutes to go, and there's still so much to cover. And hopefully when I get a really nice sponsor, so if you're listening out there, we can have a 2-hour broadcast where we present the topic and then we talk to community about the topic. But we might have to do a part 2 on this and really make that part 2 just an open mic, have people call in and really share their views about what they think about what we're saying. I think that's what we should do.
Sure.
Okay, maybe sometime in October we'll look into coming back with a follow-up. But the bottom line is, Kurt Franklin has this song called Last Jesus, and people sing it, but I don't really think they pay attention to the lyrics, so I just wanted to go through some of the verses. It says, "I see you," and this is the person on the street, right? Looking at those of us who are passing them every day as believers and say, "I see you, I need you, but I don't know your name." And then on the flip side, our response is, "I touch you, I say I love you, but that's all you're going to get for today." It's so easy to tell you it's going to be okay when I don't walk in your shoes, haven't been through what you've been through. Instead, I push you away. Too busy? Forgive me. I've got problems of my own. It's easier to say your help is on the way, but I was your help all along. So we have to realize we're the hands that God has put here to make a difference. And then, of course, the chorus, the hook is, if I say I love Jesus, but you can't see my Jesus, my words are empty. If they can't see the Jesus in me, no more excuses. I give myself away. This is that song that we sing almost every Sunday, and every church across this nation sings, "I give myself away." And then we go back to doing what we were doing and not giving ourselves away. But because, I may be the only Jesus that someone gets to see. So it's important that we, give ourselves that little extra mile. Listen, we're wrapping this up. I want to get into this piece. When I was speaking with Talib, he opened my eyes to a whole different angle on this thing in terms of the church. and the effect that we have on community. And so we've talked about the individual, we've talked about the church as the body, which is 1 Corinthians chapter 12, all the way through to the end of the chapter. I encourage you to read it again, because every part of the body is useful, and we have become so fractured. And one of the things that you're speaking about is the negative effect of having these multiple churches within community. When you have 4 and 5 blocks on a corner or a 4-block radius, what are some of the things that you've even learned through, policy and studying, economics and how things work? How is that negatively affecting community?
Well, basically, since churches are non-profit entities, they're not. They don't pay taxes, right? So I'm not saying churches should pay taxes, but when you have multiple non-profit entities, let's say you have 10 slots, 10 building spaces on one block, and 5 of those building spaces are taken up for the church, and in Harlem, that's very common. That means that 5 out of those 10 building spots are not paying taxes. So basically, you're by having all these churches condensed to such a small space, you're hollowing out the tax base, which means that you're not getting as much revenue just for public goods and services, for things even like trash collection, police and firefighter services. So it's economically unproductive to have so many churches. Economically, it hurts the community to have so many churches in a condensed space. And I think that, churches should think entrepreneurially, but they should think entrepreneurially in terms of the Great Commission. Not entrepreneurially in terms of, well, Reverend so-and-so has been studying under Bishop so-and-so, and now Reverend so-and-so wants his own church, so he's going to open up a storefront right over here. No, that's not what it's about. It's not about you getting your thing off. It's about how do we help save souls, how do we help reach the people. Now, if you think that opening up a new church, you have some kind of new or different approach that will reach people in a different way, that is beautiful. That's a great thing. But also, ask, do I really need a new building for this? I wasn't, and I'm glad you read the lyrics from the Kirk Franklin song, and I'm talking past because normally out of time. I was not always a Christian. I've only been a Christian for maybe like 2 years. I only got baptized last December. It hasn't even been a year, right? And so part of the reason I have a critical eye is because for so much of my life, I was very critical of Christians and the church from what I saw. And now that I am a Christian, I'm even more critical now because, wait a second, like, aren't you guys reading the Bible? Like, it says, such and such in here. And one of the first church that I felt welcomed at was Grace DC. It's a church in Washington, D.C. They don't even have their own church building. They rent out church space. They rent out their space from another church, and they hold their services at 5:30 in the evening, which is very convenient for me and a lot of other young professionals who, quite frankly, didn't want to get up, to go to church at 9 o'clock in the morning and those casual dress or whatever, what have you. And so with Grace DC, they specifically say on their website, they have a website, they need a website, they'll say on their website, you don't have to participate, you can just come and just sit in the back, you don't have to be a Christian, you don't have to be a believer, you just want to come and see how we do things. Well, we'd love to have you. And their whole process and their whole service, all their services are geared toward people who know nothing about Christianity. And I think that that's kind of the attitude that we need to have as a church body, is to go out and talk to people who may know nothing about anything, about Jesus or about God or about Christianity, instead of just operating in a way that pleases that pleases us. And that goes back to the point of having, we don't need 5 churches on one block.
So here's the thing that I got from that I never understood. My mind just never went there. I understood the spiritual perspective of being one body, and that the fracturing that's existing, how that's not good from a body perspective. I understood even the cultural perspective in terms of how it can impact our community if we're so isolated. We're just traveling in from our neighborhoods to that neighborhood on a Sunday and then leaving. But then the economic perspective, I just never connected the fact of street cleaning and getting the lights fixed and response time and all these things that are tied into taxes and money and availability, to the fact that multiple churches in an area is actually tapping away from that. But then my question was, couldn't a storefront church or one of these churches say to you, no, but that's okay because we're taking care of our congregants, we're taking care of our community, we have it covered, we make up the difference?
And I would say that would be fine if the churches were doing that, but we're not. I mean, let's call it what it is. I mean, we're not. If we were, Jeffrey Canada needs to open up a Harlem Children's Home. You know, if all these churches, if you have, 5 of them on the block, if they all had after school and tutoring and all this, and they were offering all these services to the community every day of the week, using their spaces instead of being a lot of these churches are closed every day except for Sunday. And part of the reason is why they say they can't open. A lot of churches can't afford to stay open, every day of the week. Well, then, do you really need a church building? I mean, what are you really there for? So, I think that we really have to take a hard look at ourselves and ask ourselves, what are we really offering to the community as opposed to what are we really offering to ourselves? And I have to check myself. I'm pretty sure churches don't pay property taxes. I could be wrong on that, but I do know as nonprofit entities, there's some taxes that churches do not pay.
Well, I thought of some examples even as you were speaking, and people might pick at the spiritual perspective of this entity that I'm about to mention, but in terms of their community and economic plan, they've been pretty much the model of what you're talking about. And I think of Abyssinian Baptists in Harlem who saw the need of community. And Dr. Butt said, you know what, we're going to develop our own schools and we're going to create housing for our community. And it started initially with the local church with their congregants praying about it, but also taking action to write a proposal and submit it. Understand that when you write a proposal for a school or for some type of development, it takes at least 5 years before that clears the table. And so you've got to be into things for the long haul. And even when they had their space, Thurgood Marshall Academy, their initial space, there were sharing, there were difficulties, there were problems. They didn't give up. And as a result, here we are decades later, and everyone knows about Abyssinian Corp because they have now, I believe, 7 schools that are under their belt. The DOE has turned over the enrollment of those schools to them, which is huge because the Department of Education doesn't do that. And, they have housing, and they're incorporating enough business that they're actually hiring real positions. Right. Like I could graduate from college and come in and do this, and the same thing with the Harlem Children's Zone. So guys, we have to have a vision that is greater than the store on the corner or even a daycare. We need to be open every day. We need to have people need to have accessibility to us. So it starts with one. Talib has been on the corner doing this, and then he's now on the show and I'm sharing with you, and so now you're hearing this. Now what? What goes on? Yvonne's telling me we need 2 hours for this, but unfortunately we only have 1 today. But I promise you we will have just an open discussion on this because I think it needs to happen. But instead of going back to your church and saying, hey, you guys are the problem, let's look at ourselves, each one of us, the power of one as an individual. Jackie, I've been challenged, what can I do? And then now, the body of Christ, let's learn to start working together and being able to make all of this happen because it's so important. This show has been brought to you by the Caribbean American Expo. Full Gospel Tabernacle is having an expo too. All the benefits and proceeds are going to Kumasi, Ghana, the schools and churches there. This is happening October 12th at the Macedonia Center. It's $50. You are going to get dinner and full entertainment, and you're going to really enjoy yourself and know all proceeds are going to go to bless a community that has been really struggling. If you want more information, I have tickets. You can find me on Facebook, Don't Give Up, or you can call 718-515-6463. That's 718-515-6463. May God bless you and keep you. Thank you again, Talib, for being with us, and hopefully we can definitely do this again real soon. Technology is a wonderful thing. I'm so glad that we can have it and use it. I'm thankful for Sailor Radio for offering the opportunity to be able to share the power of God's word. We go out on this song, The Power of One.
I just wanna be like you, walk like, talk like, even think like you. The only one I could look to. You're teaching me to be just like you. Well, I just gotta be like, I just gotta be like you.
Dear, I'm